Well, hello, my name is Brian Lewis, and we're going to be talking about designing high converting forms. So, for those of you out there who have websites that have forms, probably one of the main objectives that you have is for visitors to fill out those forms at a high rate. So, let's talk about what we can do to entice visitors to fill out the form more frequently. When a visitor encounters a form on your site, there's that immediate sense of uncertainty. Uncertainty in the sense of what they're going to gain and also what they're going to need to sacrifice. So visitors are going to make a systematic decision whether to complete your form based on a number of factors, including the expected benefit and the perceived effort of filling out that form, along with what information that they're going to have to give you. So you can improve the chances of them completing that form by following several recommendations that we've tested that have worked quite well. First recommendation is to avoid multi-column forms. And you've probably encountered this yourself. You get on a form and there's form fields that move both horizontally and vertically. And you're not sure when you fill out a form, do you move horizontally or do you move vertically to the next form field? And what we want to do is we want to make that form as simple as possible. We don't want visitors to have to think about how to fill out a form. So the way to help that situation is by making sure that your forms are all singular column, either vertical, preferably vertical, but horizontal if there's very few form fields and you don't have a lot of vertical space will also work. The next one, this one's pretty obvious, right? Limit the number of form fields. And that's typically true, but there is an exception to that. If your visitors are expecting that you should be asking for a certain piece of information and you don't, they may be a little skeptical then if they're really going to get the result that they're hoping for from filling out the form. An example would be a life insurance quote site. Most people are going to recognize that they can't get a life insurance quote without giving their date of birth. Now, they may not be comfortable giving their date of birth, but they're probably going to be expecting that they need to give that. And if that field's missing on that form, they're probably thinking, hey, I'm not going to get a quote. I'm probably going to get a call from a salesperson. They may be less likely to fill that out. So remember, it's not always 100% that the less number of fields is better. Think about the importance of fields and actually what might happen if a missing field is not on the page or on the form. So you also want to consider for long forms, a multi-step form or a multi-page form. Remember that visitors are going to be making their decision based on perceived effort. So if they come to a page and they see a long form, they're seeing the whole thing at once, the perceived effort of that is going to be huge. If they go to a site and they see just one or two form fields with a next button, they may not have a clear indication or idea of how many form fields there's going to be, but they will still think that the perceived effort will be less based on visually what they're seeing from the form. So we've had good success when we take long forms and make them into smaller form fields or forms with just fewer fields on them. The placement of the form. There tends to be this general thinking that the form should be right in the visitor's face when they land on the page, up in the hero area. And we would strongly encourage testing that because that's not always the case, and especially in situations where visitors need to do a certain amount of research. If a lot of the visitors to your site are early stage visitors in terms of them being in the research stage, they're most likely not going to be ready to fill out a form. They may want information first. And we have seen successes in locating forms lower down on the page than being up at the top of the page. A lot of forms have optional fields. First thing about optional fields is make sure they're clearly labeled as optional, or the inverse of that is make sure the required fields are clearly labeled as required. But think about optional fields. Optional fields are there probably more for your benefit than the visitor's benefit. And maybe if you can live without those and get that information on the secondary contact, what you're going to do is shorten up the number of form fields on that form, which is going to, again, reduce that perceived effort from your visitor's perspective. And then finally, let's talk about the button and leveraging really the power of the text of that button. It's usually helpful to reiterate what the benefit of filling out that form is in the button. We've done a lot of tests with different text on call to action buttons, and in almost all cases, so the word submit does not pull better than actually selling the benefit. Not that we don't suggest testing that, because we actually have seen a test where submit did outpull, reiterating what the benefit of the form is. But think again about your visitors making that decision when they see that button. Selling them again on what the benefit is very succinctly could help them make that decision to choose that button. And then also when it comes to the call to action text, It's best not to make a promise that you can't keep. So, yes, you may be able to get that conversion, but if the follow-up contact may not go well. So if you put it, going back to the life insurance quote, if the button says get life insurance quote now, and they click that button, but instead a page pops up that says we'll be contacting you, that person may not want to talk with you after that. So sometimes it's best to go ahead and be completely transparent and honest with that call to action text rather than trying to deceive the individual into thinking they're getting something that they're not. So hopefully that's been helpful for those of you who have forms on your site. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.